The Mongolian Steppe. 1162 A.D. Nothing but grass in every direction as far as the eye can see. A baby is born in a jeer tent. His father names him Temujin. In 25 years, that baby will be Genghis Khan. In 40 years, he will rule an empire that stretches from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. The Mongol Empire did not build great walls or magnificent temples. It built a military machine so fast, so adaptive, and so ruthless that civilizations which had stood for 1,000 years collapsed in weeks. Not because the Mongols were savage, because they were smarter than everyone they fought. Today, you're going to live every rank of the system that made that possible, from a barefoot herdboy on the endless steppe to a name that made the world change direction. Before we rank up, let's kill the biggest myth about the Mongols right now. The Mongols were not a disorganized horde. They were the most sophisticated mobile military force the medieval world had ever produced. They had real-time battlefield communication using signal flags, drums, and smoke, a command and control system that let Genghis Khan direct armies across distances of miles with precision that European commanders could not match for another 600 years. Their intelligence network was unmatched. Before any major campaign, Mongol scouts and merchants had already mapped enemy territory, identified weaknesses, and established relationships with discontented local populations. The Mongols also had a meritocracy so radical it shocked the medieval world. Rank was earned through demonstrated ability, not birth. A slave could become a general. A conquered enemy could command Mongol troops. Genghis Khan's greatest generals included former enemies he had defeated and then appointed to lead his armies. 10 ranks. The fastest expanding empire in history, built from the steppe up. Rank 1. Kharchin, the Herdboy Recruit. You are 9 years old. You have never been in a city. You have never seen a wall made of stone. What you have done is ride a horse since before you could walk. Every Mongol child could. The Mongol relationship with horses was unlike any other culture in history. A Mongol warrior would rather walk than ride a poor horse, and rather die than lose his horse in battle. Your first training wasn't weapon training. It was horse archery. Shooting a composite bow accurately while riding at full gallop. The Mongol composite bow was a technological marvel, shorter than a standard longbow but more powerful, made from layers of bone, sinew, and wood laminated together under extreme tension. A skilled Mongol archer could fire 6 arrows per minute accurately from horseback at full gallop. No army in the medieval world had an answer for this. By age 12, if your accuracy and horsemanship met the standard, you were assigned to a real unit. If not, you kept herding until you did. Rank 2. Harvachu, the foot soldier. Not every Mongol started on horseback in their first unit. The Harvachu were the infantry, essential for siege operations, urban fighting, and holding positions cavalry couldn't defend. The Mongols are famous for cavalry, but they conquered China, Persia, and Russia, all of which had massive cities with walls. Cavalry cannot take a walled city alone. The Mongols solved this by absorbing the siege expertise of every civilization they conquered. Chinese engineers, Persian mathematicians, Arab architects, all pressed into service building the weapons that took the next city. As Harvachu, your training included close combat, spear formations, and the basics of siege operations, filling in the gaps that mounted warriors couldn't cover. You also served as the cleanup force after cavalry charges, moving through broken enemy formations to finish the engagement and secure the position. The most important thing you learned as Harvachu was the Mongol tactical philosophy: speed, deception, and never fighting on the enemy's terms. If the enemy was strong in a position, you left. If they chased you, you turned. If they stood still, you surrounded them. The Mongols almost never fought the battle the enemy had prepared for. Rank 3. Arad, the Mounted Warrior. This is what every Mongol trained to become. You have your own horse, your own weapons, your own armor, maintained entirely by yourself. The Mongol cavalry operated in 2 types: light cavalry, who wore minimal armor and specialized in harassment, speed, and archery, and heavy cavalry, who wore full lamellar armor and carried lances for the decisive charge. Light cavalry was your specialty first. You learned to ride toward an enemy, fire, and wheel away before they could close, repeating this over and over until the enemy formation broke from casualties and frustration. This tactic, the Parthian shot, firing backward while retreating, became the signature of Mongol warfare and drove European knights to madness. You couldn't catch them. You couldn't corner them. You just took arrows until you broke. Your unit operated in a decimal system. You were one of 10 in an arban. 10 arbans made a zun, 10 zuns made a minghan, 10 minghans made a tumen. This decimal organization meant every Mongol warrior always knew exactly who commanded them, exactly where they fit, and exactly what was expected of them in any situation. The discipline required to maintain this structure at full gallop across miles of steppe was extraordinary, and it was the foundation of every Mongol tactical achievement. Rank 4. Zun Darga. Commander of 100. You command 100 warriors. By Mongol standards, this is where leadership actually begins. At this rank, you had to master something that went beyond combat skill, reading terrain at speed. The Mongols had no fixed battlefields. Every engagement was fought on ground the Mongols chose or manipulated the enemy into choosing. A Zun Darga needed to see that ground and make decisions in seconds. You were also responsible for your 100 men's horses. And in the Mongol army, a warrior without a horse was nearly useless. A Mongol army on campaign could cover up to 100 miles in a single day by rotating horses constantly, a speed of movement that was physically impossible for any contemporary European or Chinese army. At this level, you also began studying the Yasa, Genghis Khan's legal code that governed the empire and the army simultaneously. The Yasa was ruthless, consistent, and applied equally to everyone, including Genghis Khan's own family. In an era of arbitrary noble privilege, this was genuinely revolutionary. Rank 5. Minghan Darga. Commander of 1,000. 1,000 Mongol warriors under your direct command. An independent tactical force capable of operating alone across hundreds of miles of enemy territory. At this rank, you were trusted to operate independently, days or weeks' ride from the nearest support. The psychological warfare component of Mongol strategy was your primary tool before any physical engagement. Cities that surrendered received protection and integration into the empire. Cities that resisted were made into examples, deliberately and completely, so the next city would choose differently. This was not mindless cruelty. It was a calculated system designed to minimize the total cost of conquest by making resistance seem obviously futile. The result, many of the Mongols' most significant conquests were achieved without a single major battle through surrender alone. You also began managing the empire's communication infrastructure, the Yam postal system, which used relay stations every 25 miles to carry messages across the empire at speeds that wouldn't be matched until the telegraph. Rank 6. Tumen Darga. Commander of 10,000. 10,000 Mongol warriors. 1 Tumen, the largest standard organizational unit in the Mongol military, and a force that could independently conquer most medieval kingdoms. Historical records show that a single Mongol Tumen routinely defeated enemy forces 3 to 4 times its size, not through superior numbers, but through superior coordination and speed. As Tumen Darga, the political dimensions of command became as important as the military ones. Your Tumen likely contained warriors from a dozen different conquered peoples, Chinese, Persians, Russians, Turks, all operating under Mongol command structure and Yasa law. Managing this diversity was one of the Mongol Empire's greatest administrative achievements, and one of the most underappreciated explanations for why it grew so fast. The Battle of Mohi in 1241, where a single Mongol Tumen annihilated the Hungarian royal army, is the case study still taught in military academies today. You study it yourself, not as history, as instruction. Every engagement is a lesson. The Mongols never stopped learning from their campaigns. Rank 7. Noyan, the noble warlord. You command multiple Tumen, Your authority spans entire campaigns, entire conquered territories. The Noyan rank was where the Mongol meritocracy produced its most extraordinary results. Generals like Subutai and Jebi rose from ordinary warrior backgrounds to command armies that reshaped continents. Subutai was arguably the greatest military commander in human history. He fought in more battles than any other general on record, and lost almost none of them. At the Battle of the Sit River in 1238, Subutai destroyed the Russian army in winter conditions that the Russians believed made military operations impossible. The Mongols attacked anyway. They won anyway. As Noyan, you were also expected to govern as well as conquer. Territories you captured became your administrative responsibility. The Mongols were, surprisingly, excellent administrators. They maintained existing bureaucratic systems, exempted religious institutions from taxation, and encouraged trade on a scale that connected Asia and Europe for the first time. Rank 8, Orkhan, the Royal Guard, the Keshig. The Keshig were not just bodyguards. They were the empire's most elite warriors, its intelligence service, its officer training academy, and its most trusted diplomatic corps, all in one. Selection to the Keshig was the highest honor available to a Mongol warrior who was not of the ruling Borjigin clan. Genghis Khan personally interviewed every candidate for the Keshig. He reportedly asked each one, "If I ordered you to do something that seemed wrong, would you do it?" The correct answer was not yes. It was, "Tell me why you need it done, and I will find a way." Keshig guarded the Khan's jur in rotating shifts. Day shift, night shift, quiver bearers, and the inner guard. A Keshig who fell asleep on duty was executed. No exceptions, no appeals. The sons of conquered kings served in the Keshig as both honored guests and very politely managed hostages, learning Mongol methods while ensuring their father's cooperation. As a Keshig, you knew things. You saw things. The empire's secrets passed through you constantly, and the penalty for betraying any of them was well understood by everyone. Rank 9. Khan, ruler. Khan is not a rank you reach through promotion. You are born eligible for it, or you fight your way into it. Genghis Khan was not born Khan. He was born Temujin into a family that was enslaved when he was 9 years old after his father was poisoned. He spent his teens as a fugitive, his 20s building alliances, and his 30s unifying all the Mongol tribes through a combination of brilliant strategy, genuine charisma, and ruthless efficiency. At the Kurultai of 1206, Temujin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, universal ruler of all the Mongol peoples. He was 44 years old and had already survived more than most warriors could imagine. As Khan, your greatest challenges were not military, they were succession and administration, holding together a territory too vast for any single person to govern. Genghis Khan divided his empire among his sons while still living, trying to prevent the succession wars that would eventually fragment what he built. He failed, ultimately. After his death, the empire split and eventually fragmented, but what he built while alive changed the world more than almost any other individual in history. Rank 10. Khagan, Great Khan, the legend. Khagan, Khan of Khans, was a title that went beyond political authority. It was an acknowledgement that some individuals changed the trajectory of history itself. Genghis Khan's impact on world history is almost impossible to overstate. He is estimated to have killed 40 million people in his campaigns, roughly 10% of the world's population at the time. He also created the conditions for the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace, a century of unprecedented trade, cultural exchange, and technological transfer across Eurasia that directly enabled the Renaissance. The Black Death that killed a third of Europe's population traveled along the Mongol trade routes. So did paper money, the compass, and the printing press. History is complicated. Genghis Khan's burial location is unknown. He instructed that his grave be unmarked and that anyone who witnessed his burial be killed, so the location could never be found. For 800 years, explorers and archaeologists have searched. The grave has never been found. From a barefoot herdboy whose father was poisoned and whose family was left to die on the steppe, to a name still spoken 800 years later in every country on earth that his armies once crossed. That is the life of a Mongol warrior. The Mongols were not an accident of history. They were the product of a system, a military and social structure that turned the harsh reality of steppe life into the most effective conquering force the world has ever seen. 10 ranks, 800 years of legend, and a question historians still argue about: was the Mongol Empire the worst thing that ever happened to the medieval world, or the most important thing? The answer, as with all of history's most significant forces, is both. Next week on Shroudex, explain. POV, you are the president of Russia. How do you actually run the largest country on earth? What decisions do you face on day one? And what does it cost you to stay in power? Subscribe so you don't miss it.